I'm excited to share with you all that I've contributed a chapter to the newly published Anxiety Relief Handbook. The handbook provides a unique window into 11 highly effective complementary therapies for you to sample on your quest to ease anxiety. The ebook is available on my website, happynurse.com.au/anxiety relief handbook.
If you have a very strong why when you start your career, or even if you're making a move in your career and you connect to that, you know, no matter what happens, that you will get to your why, to your impossible goal. It's so strong. The compelling why is something that I think is missing in a lot of humans, not just clinicians. I think it's a great space to start when you're really beginning to explore what it is you really want in your career.
Welcome to the Happy Nurse Podcast. Nurses are the backbone of healthcare, always there to care for strangers as if they were one of their own, often forsaking special moments with their own family in order to ensure another's loved one is being cared for. As nurses, self-care is essential. I am Elena Mullery, nurse educator and self-care mentor for nurses. I'm an RN with 20 years of clinical experience. I have first-hand experience of stress and burnout. It was this experience which led me to develop a passion for personal development and pursue the study of mindfulness, meditation, hypnotherapy, and neuro-linguistic programming. Each episode, I will be promoting self-care strategies to those who always care for others. I have broken self-care down into 5 aspects: mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, and indulgence, to make it easy to ensure all your self-care needs are being met. Each episode, I will interview nurses and self-care gurus from around the world to help you with each aspect of your self-care. Welcome to the Happy Nurse Podcast with Elena Mullery.
Hi everyone, welcome to this episode of the Happy Nurse Podcast. Today I am joined by my amazing friend, Liam Caswell. Welcome back to the show, Liam.
Hello, Elena. Hello, everyone at the Happy Nurse Podcast. It's fab to be here.
Liam has his own podcast as well. I'm sure many of you have heard of it. He's been a guest on this podcast before. He has a high performance nursing podcast, so please check it out if you haven't already. Liam is a high-performance nurse coach. He's got 10 years of international healthcare experience across Scotland, England, Australia, and Fiji. He has a varied clinical background, and Liam has experience in critical care, acute medicine, rehab, tertiary education, and clinical leadership. Liam seeks to coach, educate, and transform the lives and careers of nurses, empowering them to balance self-care and well-being on the path to high-performance nursing. Liam has a dual master's in international public health and health management from the University of New South Wales, Sydney, and has most recently become an NLP practitioner, all of which positively influences coaching practice. Liam's vision is simple. He wants to influence and reshape the nursing narrative, empowering nurses to deliver high-performance care for our patients whilst caring for ourselves. I love that vision that you have, Liam.
Yeah, it's good to reconnect to that vision, actually. It's funny how it evolves. Like, it's always fundamentally the same, but yeah, you reading that, I'm like, that's right. That's what my vision is.
That is your vision. That's your why.
That is my why.
Start with why, isn't it?
Very good.
Simon Sinek, you got to love him.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, you've got to connect with that why. Why are we doing what we're doing? And I think as nurses, that's really important, actually.
Yeah. Well, we all know what we do, right? We all know what we do. Like, I'm a critical care nurse. Many of us we know how we do it. We know how we do our job day to day, but we don't actually stop and really think about, why is it that I'm doing this?
Yeah. What's the evidence base behind this? Is there a different way to do this? Yeah.
Yeah. We love a rationale, but we don't stop and apply that rationale to ourselves, I think, is what I find when I coach nurses, is we really don't stop and go, well, why do I work in rehabilitation care?
Yeah, exactly. What is it about that aspect of nursing that attracted you there in the first place? Why did you not go and be a stoma nurse? It's all these different, there's so many different avenues to go down with nursing.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Like myself, I've been in theatre for over 20 years. And I know there's all these other options available, but I don't want to go looking there because I'm quite happy where I am. I don't know if that's because I'm in my comfort zone and I don't want to push the boundaries, or if it's just that I know I'm good at it and I'm going to stay where I'm good.
Yeah, it's a good point, because it's a confronting question, because it kind of like makes you really question what you believe to be true, right? And most people's why is determined by a graduate panel when they start their career and they apply for a graduate program, and their why is literally determined by their lived experience to that point and the hope that they're going to get their specialty. And then a panel's like, no, you're going to go to mental health for 6 months and aged care, and you wanted to go to critical care. And all of a sudden, that in itself can really, change it up for you in your career, and you can get really disconnected from your why straight away. Because if your why is to deliver one-to-one nursing care in ICU as a graduate and you start in mental health and aged care, that is very far removed from your why.
Yeah, very, very different to the expectation you had of what your nursing career was going to look like.
Yeah, but I guess if you have a very strong why when you start your career, or even if you're making a move in your career and you connect to that, no matter what happens, whether it's aged care, mental health, that you will get to your why, to your goal, right? Your impossible goal, because ultimately it's so strong. Like, that's why Simon Sinek talks about it. The why is the motivator. It's like, why do you get up every day and go to work? Like, you got to pay the bills, you got to do all the things, you got family to feed, but also because you want to deliver care to your patients. So, the why, a compelling why, is something that I think is missing in a lot of humans, not just clinicians. I think it's a great space to start when you're really beginning to explore what it is you really want in your career.
I feel like I'm just finally really connecting to my why now in the work that I do outside of my clinical role. And it was going down this path of the happy nurse and the workshops and the podcast. And it's now led me to, I'm studying a double major in psychology and counselling, and that is really my why. Like, I am so passionate about what I'm doing now, and I want to use my degree when I finish to work as a therapist for nurses and healthcare professionals, because I've got this understanding of what it's like to work in that environment, having done it for 20 years. But it's just all been a process. You know what I mean? It's like the first domino went, and then the next one, then the next one. And now I find myself, 22 years post-registration back at uni. I wanted to change my major to psychology when I was at uni.
Yeah.
And I didn't. I got talked out of it. But this is the path I was meant to take. So yeah, I'm very grateful for it. It's very interesting, isn't it? And as you said, you always reconnect back to your why.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And I think a lot of people, myself included, think that the why is just going to happen overnight. I spent a lot of those 10 years as a clinician being like, what the hell am I doing? Why am I doing this? And really beating myself up, because I was like, why haven't I worked this out yet? And it's reassuring. I think the beauty of podcasting and chatting to people like yourself is we get to hear other people's stories in 20 years. But in that 20 years, you've been sampling, you've been exploring, you've been doing different things, and you've been following your curiosity, and that's led you to where you are today. And often we can't, on the journey there, we're like, we just don't know what's going to happen, right? But when we look back, like you say, it all lines up beautifully. And I feel the same way about coaching. I thought my life was going to be as a clinician, a leader, building my career. I had goals of becoming director of nursing and, being the hospital CEO. And then when I experienced coaching and just the transformations that I had from coaching, I just knew straight away that I needed to explore this and dive deeper into it. And here we are, like it's my life now. It's what I want to do. And my why, my career why now is to be an example of what's possible for nurses in their career and their lives. It's, you can create whatever the hell you want. I just want to get that through to nurses and clinicians across the board. If you want to create something, you can. You're 100% capable of doing it. You just have to start taking the steps.
Oh, most definitely. I mean, I look back on how far I've come, from when I graduated, year 2000. I think you were the same year, weren't you, Liam?
Oh, I was a little bit later.
Oh, sorry. I'm 2 years. Yeah, you're 10 years younger than me. What am I saying? You weren't even in high school. Gosh.
No, I think I was 3. No, I'm kidding. I'll
be the grandma. Yeah, like I qualified in 2000. And when I think about the last 22 years and what I've done and what I've achieved, and yeah, it's pretty crazy. But it's all taken its own natural path. But I've always had this internal curiosity in me. And I've always not been scared to just go for something and take the plunge. And it's not been a success every time. It's never going to be, but you learn from that success. And then you know what you want and what you don't want from, not the success, from the disappointment or the perceived failure. It's not a failure because you always learn something.
Yeah.
But, it was my nursing that took me across the world to Australia, a bit like yourself,
Yeah. And I think we're conditioned within the profession to kind of, as soon as you start, you get put in a box. You're a graduate, you've got to do X amount of years. And before you can apply for the next role, you've got to, tick all the boxes and have 5 years under your belt and have a postgraduate, blah, 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 blah. And I think that's great, but times are changing. I chat to people every day that are literally holding themselves back. They're 9, 10, 11, 12 years, 20 years down the track. And they're like, I don't think I'm ready to apply for that yet. Or I don't think I'm ready to move forward because they are so scared of the failure. I love that you bring that up. They're so scared of failing because they make the failure mean something about themselves rather than it just being just an event. It's just a thing. Like, it's just something that happens in life. Like, we have to fail to succeed. And I think we're a little bit slow on the uptake of that, myself included. I was failure averse. And I think the profession drums into us that you can't fail. So we have to undo that pattern. There's literally we come into work and they're like, don't make any mistakes. Don't give the wrong medications. You could kill someone. And we're all like, oh my goodness. And then that feeds into the rest of our life where we're then like, we don't want to invest in a personal trainer because we're worried that we'll fail and we won't lose weight. And it just spills over. And I think the beauty of the work that you do, the work that I do, is that we can then go, how's that serving you to believe that that's true now? Let's just take a step back and look at it from afar and just see, is this serving you in your life? And is it allowing you to be the best version of yourself? And failure or not, I love the failures. I'm give me all the failures. And I talk about it all the time on my podcast. We need to increase our failure tolerance as humans. As clinicians, maybe not so much, but as humans, we need to increase our tolerance to failure. We need to fail harder and fail forwards. A lot of people fail backwards. They fail, they stop, they stagnate, and they don't go for it ever again because they've made it mean something really terrible about their worth and their capacity. Instead of being like, this is great feedback. Thank you, universe. I'm moving forward and I'm going to try something different.
Yeah, take another path less traveled rather than the one that everyone else takes. And I love how you say failing forward, because it is you may feel like you've failed or you perceive that it's a failure, but think of what you've learned from that experience. There's always a silver lining. And I don't want to sound like toxic positivity. That's not the way I want it to come across. But there's always a lesson. And if nothing else, it just shows you that wasn't what was meant to be, But I think people get tied up in the shame around it as well, And it's people need to embrace vulnerability more. Now I'm going down Brene Brown's path. But
Preach, love Brene.
It's that whole, we're scared to be vulnerable. And to allow ourselves to fail is to be very vulnerable. It's probably one of the most ultimate things to do, to be vulnerable. But yeah, there's so much to be learned in that process at the same time.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if I've ever shared this on the podcast before, but this is my third attempt at moving to Australia. The first 2 times I failed, but I kept going. I think they call me a ping pong pom because I kept.
I've never heard that.
There's a few of us in Perth, apparently.
I love that.
This is the third time I've moved here, because the first 2 times I got incredibly homesick and wanted to go home. So I did. But yeah, I've been here now 12 years and Australia is my adopted home. But if I hadn't have kept going, goodness knows what way my life would have went. I mean, it could have been even better. It could have been even worse. But I know that I followed that dream. And even though it didn't work out the first couple of times, I persevered. And here I am now.
Yeah, the vulnerability is such a big piece, and we love Brene Brown. I've actually started, I know you're a huge fan of her as well, started reading her book, Atlas of the Heart.
Yeah, I've read most of it.
Yeah, it's a deep book, but it's fascinating, and I'm loving it so far. And I just think that there's such scope for us to lean into the vulnerability in healthcare a bit more, and to kind of let that armor down, let the guard down, as Brene says, the transformer, just let it down. And just embrace that daring leadership style. Whether you're a nurse on the floor, you're a director of nursing, whatever, everybody is leading, and just leaning into that learning versus knowing. You don't have to know everything. I think, again, that's something that we're fed, is that we need to know it all. Like, doctors know everything. They're so, us nurses, we don't know everything. We need to go into a specialty so we can become a specialist and learn everything there is to know. It's just not humanly possible. We're setting ourselves up for failure. And it's fine if you're failure tolerant, but most of us aren't, right? Most of us aren't failure tolerant.
But even doctors are specialists in their own field as well. They don't know everything about everything because they're so specialized in what it is that they specialize in.
Yeah, for sure. I love reminding myself that vulnerability, as humans, we don't there's 3 things that we don't really love buying into, and we will avoid at all costs. It's avoiding pain, we're seeking pleasure, and what's the third thing? I'm forgetting. Avoid pain, seek pleasure, and do something with the least amount of energy to achieve a goal. We want to stay safe in our comfort zone. And vulnerability requires us to challenge all 3 of those things, plus lots of other things. But on a simple concept, requires you to consciously go through pain and choose to move through pain. There's no pleasure, or there's little pleasure in the process. You have to create the pleasure and the gratitude and the positivity for yourself, and you have to put effort in. I see it all the time working with nurses that are going for their dream job, or leading a team for the first time. They have to challenge those 3 those 3 challenge areas, and moving through that's really hard. And vulnerability is the first step in that, just being open to it and leaning into it.
Yeah.
Easier said than done.
It is easier said than done, but once you embrace it, it just becomes a way of life and how you operate, especially as a clinician, I think.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's a lot to be said as well about if you're going to be leaning into the vulnerability. This is a perfect segue to talk about psychological safety in the workplace. That is a culture that we need to be adopting so that people can feel vulnerable and ask the hard questions and, ask for help and look at things in a different way.
I think we need to create more space for psychological safety. I was amazed when I was working as a nurse unit manager and as an educator, how few people knew about it. It just was not a concept anybody understood. And I'm just wow, this is the crux of creating a high-performing team, is having psychological safety in the workplace. And yes, it can be challenging to create, but there are little micro steps that people can take day to day. And, whether you're a team leader, a NUM, an educator, or just a peer on the floor, assistant in nursing, you can create a psychologically safe space for our patients, which we do very well typically. What do you need? What can we get you? Like, we're here to look after you. We set them up for success as best as we can, but we then do offer that to ourselves, our colleagues, the multidisciplinary team. And that's where we need to extend that safety so that we can operate at our highest level. It is, I think, a fundamental missing piece. And the challenge is, and we talked about this earlier, how do you create psychological safety when there are so many pressures? Like, you've got 10 patients waiting in ED, and you've got 6 staff on shift today, and 3 of them are agency, and your budget is over by $1.5 million this year, and we've still got 6 months left. And the CEO is saying you need to cull staff on a night shift. How do you create psychological safety within your team when that's the environment that you're operating in? It's really, really challenging and requires a really high level of, and I haven't mastered this for sure, a really high level of mind management, personal trust and self-awareness that I think a lot of us, we just don't have. I'd love to know your take on it and your perspective on that. But I found it deeply frustrating, very challenging as a NUM, balancing all of that and then really buying into psychological safety and knowing how much it was going to transform the workplace.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a concept that needs to be adopted and a culture that we need to nurture within healthcare. But it's systemic. So it's like every single level has to have that psychological safety. You know what I mean? Because if you think about, I'm thinking about middle management here. So your NUMs, the way the industry is set up just now, I'm just going to say it. I'm thinking, Elena, don't censor yourself.
Go for it.
The way the industry is set up at the moment, if you don't fit in the box of the NUM and what they look like, and you try to implement something new like psychological safety, put the well-being of your staff, your employees, on the same level as the well-being of your patients, you're probably going to get walked out of the building very quickly and they'll replace you.
Yeah, for sure.
You'll no longer be required. And that's the really sad reality. Liam and I were chatting before we started recording, and we were saying, when you're in that management position, I used to act up and do theatre management occasionally. You've got the pressure from both sides on you. You're like the sandwich filling. It's a very, very interesting role to be undertaking, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a highly stressful role. And we talked about this earlier. You are literally sitting in cognitive overload, first and foremost, because there's just so much happening. It is humanly impossible to know what's happening for 30 patients, what's happening for your 50 staff and your 20 MDT, and then to be able to understand what's happening in the broader organization, and then also have your workload. It is a huge pressure. So you're cognitively overloaded, but you're also in cognitive dissonance, sitting there with, like you just said, what does the senior colleagues, what do they need from me? What do my 50 staff need from me? And you have these competing thoughts. It was like a bloody boxing match in my brain. It's I've got the Dawn saying, Liam, you've got to call somebody from night shift to take it down to 3 staff for 30 patients on a night shift in a rehab setting. Crazy. And then on the other side of it, my staff are but we can't cope. We can't do this, Liam. And I trust and value my staff and their opinion. And as a human, I'm trying to make the right decision that's ethical, moral, that's budget friendly, it doesn't fit all the boxes. So you're right. If you don't fit that mold, and you hear it all the time in healthcare, are you a yes person? Are you going to just sit there and be yes, director of nursing, I will do that. And if you're not, then there's maybe not a space for you there. And that's really sad. And that is what I have found to be true. I've worked in more progressive places that are open to it. But by default, what happens then, and that's why I came up with the concept of high performance nursing, was You become the high performer that then everybody wants you to do all of the things for them because they see that you're capable of doing it. And then the people that have been slacking for years, that haven't pulled their weight, that are in the job by default, that are yes people, they need to ride on your coattails. So your workload is like tripled, and it's like, how do you then become like deliver for your area, deliver for yourself and your team, and then also like carry 3 other wards, and then also take the failures when it doesn't work, and then it hasn't worked across 4 areas. It's very interesting. And the whole, I don't know, there's a lot of leadership toxicity. There's a lot of playing each other off each other. And I don't know if you've noticed this in senior leadership, but, Liam's ward's doing this. Maybe the 3 other CNCs or NUMs should do the same thing, which is lovely when you think about it. But then it brings up everybody's insecurities. Like, what, is my ward not doing it well enough? And because we don't have psychological safety, we can't sit there and go and celebrate like Elena's doing this amazing thing on her unit. And we should be like, wow, that's amazing. Like, how can I integrate that into my ward? But instead we go catty bitchy, like nasty. And it's like, well, how dare you? Like, that won't work on my ward because orthopedics is different to gynae. Like, no way that will work here. And you're like, really? Like, we need to systematize the processes. It needs to be systematized and tweaked accordingly. It is fascinating. I could talk forever on that.
Well, so could I. It is. And I'm sitting here, my mind is whirring as I'm listening to you. It's really, really fascinating. But it all comes down to, I don't know if it all comes down to, but a lot of it comes back to that self-awareness.
Yes. Yeah.
And awareness of what our triggers are.
Yeah.
Like the example you just gave, of someone who was implementing something that was really working, and then the others were all kind of, is that tall poppy syndrome? Is that not what they call it here in Australia?
Yeah.
It's this phenomenon that people want to knock other people's successes down. And I don't understand it myself, but I know I've certainly been a victim of it. I've recently been kind of trolled on social media, which I was really shocked by. But yeah, it's a really interesting phenomenon. But I think we all need to have this level of self-awareness so we know what our triggers are and what we will react to and why we react the way we do when we do.
And I think that that's the biggest challenge that I'm finding, and the biggest lesson that I've learned, having gone through 10 years of building my career, pushing, trying to be the high achiever, trying to people please everybody, and burning out multiple times, is that the most important thing for a clinician to be able to master is knowing themselves.
Yeah, and also on top of that, being able to be compassionate with ourselves.
Yeah.
Like we were talking about, the failure.
Yeah.
We have to be compassionate. Like, you wouldn't say to friends who've just failed the same things you say to yourself. Never, ever in a month of Sundays.
No.
It's a really interesting phenomenon. And we are our own biggest critics. And when we have that self-awareness and that self-compassion, and also it comes down to self-forgiveness as well. Like, I'm going down the mindfulness path here. This is not new stuff. This is based on Buddhist teachings that are thousands of years old. If we could all just, offer ourselves that compassion, that forgiveness, and lean into the vulnerability of being able to do that, it would start to create psychological safety. Because, yeah, the systems are broken, and like, I'm the first one to call that one out. But we all as individuals can make a collective difference by all starting to be a bit more self-aware and self-compassionate. And once you can do that for yourself, it then extends out and you're able to do that for other people too.
Yeah, it's so powerful. And like you said, we know the system is broken, right? And we can advocate, but why not advocate from a really clean, self-aware space, like where you're not hating on the system. It is what it is. It is a system that is huge, that we can influence. We cannot change it. It will take decades to, positively influence it. That's not people off doing the work, but focus on what you can control in your life and detach yourself from I really struggle. I think it's great that we advocate and we do all of these things, and we're striking in New South Wales. I think it's great. We need to have a voice, but at the same time, not if it's causing you personal issues, personal mind trauma, like PTSD. You need to see somebody for that, but also recognize that how is it serving you to sit in that like despise and resentment for the system? I did it for 10 years. I know I was, burnt out. I was anxious. I was depressed. I was overweight. It did not serve me to do that and to keep going through that process and reliving that every time something happened. Oh, well, the system's broken. This is crappy, Instead, I could go, well, yeah, it's broken, but I'm choosing to believe that I'm giving it my best and I'm doing the best that I can with what I have. And I'm so proud of that. I mean, I don't think that's toxic positivity. I think that's that's seeing two sides of the coin. It's broken, but I'm choosing to believe that I'm doing the best, and I'm proud of that.
Yeah.
I'm so, so proud of that. Versus the system's broken and I am a victim of the system.
A lot of it comes down to that intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. What is motivating our behavior? Is it external circumstances or is it something inside of us?
Yeah.
And when we're being motivated intrinsically, then we can come from that more compassionate, forgiving space rather than the shame, the blame, the externalizing that we tend to do when we start blaming the structures and the processes.
Yeah. Circle of influence, circle of concern. You can't do anything about those things. You can advocate, and you can come from a really healthy, compassionate, centered place and be like, you know what? And here's the thing, like people say, oh, but, well, when you're in it, you can't. It's really hard when you're in the moment. You have to practice creating space for yourself between the external circumstance and then your reaction or trigger to it, and allow yourself to explore that. I love what you said there about the self-compassion, self-gratitude. And I heard something recently around burnout. And I've always looked at burnout as like this terrible event that happened in my life. Like I've kind of labeled it as this thing that was just horrible, because it feels so terrible in the moment. And this guy was talking about reframing it as like one of the best things that's ever happened to you. And I thought that was a really interesting reframe. I had not thought of it as something that has served me, because had I not have burnt out, I wouldn't have set up high performance nursing. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today. Like, I don't know, like you might not have been doing happiness had you not have burnt out.
I'm sitting here nodding. Yeah, I totally agree. I would be the same. Had I not burnt out twice, I wouldn't be following the path that I am now.
Like, it's horrible to go through that. But again, it's horrible because it wasn't pleasurable. It was painful and we had to do work to get out of it. So that motivational triad was an issue and we needed to move through it. And what he was offering compassion for burnout. And he was like, why are we shaming burnout? And I thought, wow, that really spoke to my soul. And I thought, we do spend a lot of time sitting here and we're like, burnout's taking this from me. It's taking that from me. But what has it given you? I think it's such a powerful question. And anybody that's moving from like a toxic workplace, I have a friend today that phoned me just before we came on, and she is leaving a really crappy workplace. And I worked there as well, and it was not great. And today was her last day, and no one said good luck. No one said anything positive as she left the unit. ADON didn't acknowledge her work or her contributions, and it's happened to all of us. And I just said to her, I said, you know deep down what you have offered that place. And I said, and she was going down that path. I'm like, oh my God, it's terrible. And I said, what has that place given you? What has that place given you that's allowed you to create this amazing new opportunity? She's just got a promotion. She's doing a job that's Monday to Friday. She can see her kids more. I said, it has given you this. Like, you had to go through that to get this. I am a believer in that. And I think it's just better to sit in the positivity than the negativity.
Definitely. And you've made me think. I'm sitting here thinking, my burnout has definitely given me so much more than it's ever taken, without a doubt.
Yeah. And how powerful is that? Like, I've got goosebumps when you feel that.
That's very powerful. Yeah. It's given, honestly, 10 times. It's given me 10 times as much as it ever took.
And look what you've created from it.
It's that dark night of soul.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, it just depends what lens you put on, like it really does come down to consciously just choosing to look at it from different angles. And one of the things I love doing, I talked about this in our workshop, was like just writing it all down. I know there's lots of different strategies, but like write it all down on a bit of paper and just really assess it. Like, what are these thoughts that you're having, the stories, as Brene would say, that you're having about your life?
Yeah.
Like, how are they serving you? And then consciously choose whether you want to keep telling yourself that same story. Like, you wouldn't watch a Netflix documentary that was terrible, that kept repeating the same thing. But we choose to cognitively repeat the same story.
You have such a good point.
Yeah, the movie's just on repeat. And until we interrupt that pattern, we're just going to keep reliving it. And we know, having done what we've done and helping others, like what got you to this point in your career, your life, your relationship, is not going to get you to where you want to be. Like, you have to keep reinventing yourself. And we see that as a negative. I saw it as negative. I thought, why? I was in this why mindset. I didn't know why I was doing what I was doing, but I was like, why should I have to come to work every day and be harassed by relatives? Like, I was a very victim. Like, why should I stay 3 hours late to do the roster and put it out when all the staff then come back the next day and hate the roster? When I was doing it in my own time. There was so much of that going on. And I just had to stop the pattern and go, what am I doing? This is just not serving me, to think that it's true. No one was forcing me to sit there. I chose to sit there and do it.
Yeah. And it can almost become self-perpetuating when we do go down that rabbit holes of why am I bothering? Why am I doing this? But it's about focusing on, like you said, what it's bringing you, any joy that it's bringing you, the gratitude for the experience. And I'm not dismissing people having traumatic experiences and stuff. That's not what we're talking about here at all.
Yeah.
It's about that day-to-day internal narrative that we have, that we sometimes just start to get a bit self-defeatist and think, why am I bothering? It's about reframing that and rewriting that narrative and that movie, and that story that we tell ourselves.
Yeah. And imagine if we worked in a healthcare system that did that allowed us that space, that you could see, in your colleague that they were just having such a tough day, and you approach them and you say, take what you need. Go and take 10 minutes. I'm going to look after your patient loads, and go and, just work through your thoughts. Like, just write them all down, get it out of your head. And often, like, as a nurse unit manager, that was my job. I'd walk around the unit, I'd see people struggling, I'd see them having a bad day with the patients and relatives. And I'd say, right, how can we make this a bit better for you today? Let's come and have a debrief and chat through it. And they would debrief, they'd chat through it. They might have a cry. That's totally fine. And they get out there and they just feel like this weight has been lifted. Like, we know from the research that we can't operate in a cognitively overloaded state all the time. We just can't do it. And that is something that we're expected to do. From 7 a.m., we are cognitively overloaded till 3:30. It just doesn't stop. So we need to the industry needs to focus on, how can we alleviate that? How can we use technology? How can we use systems, processes to streamline the work and create a psychologically safe environment where you can approach your manager and sit in their office and cry and not feel ashamed, not worry that it's going to stop you from getting a promotion because you're not ready yet, when actually you're a human with emotions and needs.
We all fundamentally want to be seen and heard,
Yeah.
It's one of our basic needs.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of the problem in nursing, is that you don't feel seen and you don't feel heard. You just feel like you go in, you're another cog in this massive wheel. And that at times you feel like nobody really gives a shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're just a number.
Yeah, and we all come in and, you're not onboarded properly.
Yeah.
You come in, you don't get your orientation shifts. You're immediately in fight or flight, immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And that is super challenging. And that's the standard, right? That's the foundation that you're building upon, rather than coming in and it being like, I've worked in non-clinical corporate environments and it blows my mind. I'm just like, wow, for the first time in my life, I feel seen. I feel valued. I feel trusted. And it just makes such a different, you just create a different narrative from the get-go.
Yeah.
You're just operating from a much better place. We need to invest in those systems, processes.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Liam. It's always such a pleasure chatting to you. You've offered so much useful insights and tips to the listeners, as always. And yeah, Liam has the High Performance Nursing podcast, everyone. So please check him out. I'll put the link in the show notes and the link to Liam's coaching services as well. On that note, have a great day, everyone, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you for listening to the Happy Nurse podcast. If you've enjoyed today's content and would like to join the Happy Nurse community, head over to Facebook and check out the Happy Nurse AU Facebook page and request to join the Happy Nurse community. Also, check out happynurse.com.au for access to free downloads and subscription to my blog. See you soon, and in the meantime, remember to always offer yourself the same compassion that you so freely give to others. I'm excited to share with you all that I've contributed a chapter to the newly published Anxiety Relief Handbook. The handbook provides a unique window into 11 highly effective complementary therapies for you to sample on your quest to ease anxiety. The ebook is available on my website, happynurse.com.au/anxiety relief handbook.